Hi everyone, this is Jamie versus Emily, played on the 16th of February 2019. Let's go. D4, D5. Okay, so Jamie was white, Emily was black. Knight f6. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, the issue here is that you're giving your opponent a big center after takes. The idea is after they take not to take back. It's actually supposed to be a pawn sack line where you do something like c6 and you try and you try and give your opponent extra pawn, but you end up with brilliant development and a lot of pressure on the center here. I would recommend after c4 you play something like e6. And the idea is if they take with the pawn, you take back with the pawn, and you keep a pawn in the center of the board. Knight f6, you're pretty much committing yourself to a pawn sacrifice line, because after takes, you end up in quite an uncomfortable position. After e4, your opponent just has a massive center, and your knight is in danger, and you got to move it. And I mean, f6, where black went was fine, but yeah, this is great for white. White should be very happy with this position here. Yeah, so I mean, is this even book? Apparently it is. Apparently knight c3 is the move that was played. I'm looking at things like e5, but yeah, knight c3 apparently is fine. And now this is really tricky for black. I mean, you have to throw a pawn in the middle. What does the opening book say? e5. Yeah, that's what the engine says as well. e5 here is the move suggested, and the main idea here is you need to fight for the center. You can't just let your opponent run you or run all over the middle like this. And after e5, you know, if they take, you can trade queens, and you know, if they take with the knight, for instance, then you grab this pawn here, and this pawn here is kind of all on his own. And I mean, it'll probably get defended by f4 at some point, but it's equal material. It's perfectly fine. They can even take with the king, which I think is even better, because then they hang on to this pawn, and this knight has to you know, jump to here or something like that. And this is very annoying, very tricky for black to play. I mean, okay, white's threatening to just steal this f2 pawn. So you know, a move like knight h3 just defends it. And I guess the knight could take back here, and it's equal, isn't it? Well, it's not equal. White's still got a extra pawn. But the main issue that you have to worry about is white charging in and trying to do the same thing to you and attack this pawn here. And this one can't be answered by knight a6 because the bishop just rips it off, and then knight fork. And then you get this really complex line here with after knight here, king here, knight steals rook. You then have the same thing happen on the other side, and then the knight steals this rook here. And yeah, interesting position. White is still a pawn up, and yeah, both knights are trapped. Both knights are going to fall, and yeah, the engine is saying bishop b4, and yeah. So king will have to go to e2. Given that the king has to go to e2, maybe all the way back here, king e2 is better than king e1. Then that way you don't give black a free tempo. So after knight takes h1, yeah, well, knight takes c7, king moves, knight takes here. Yeah, there's no bishop b4 check anymore. But now there's a bishop g4 check. But I mean, that one can be answered by knight f3 quite simply. So in this position, white is a pawn up and has the center. So that's the thing. But yeah, e5 does give black some play. e5 is better than what was actually played, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, knight d1 is playable, but allows knight e4. King takes d1 is better. And after knight g4, yeah, knight d5, and white should end up with a better position at the end. But it's still playable for black. Is this all book? No, it's not. Yeah, bang, bang, bang. There we go. And yeah, so bishop g4 is not necessarily the move that's going to be played here, but here white's got doubled isolated e-pawns, but they are center pawns and they're taking up a lot of real estate, and white should be able to keep them defended with bishops and knights. And both these knights should eventually fall, this one in the corner here and this one in the corner there, and white should just be a pawn up. But it's still tricky to play. Anyway, let's go back to it. So knight c3, e5 is really the only move that black can play here. But black instead played knight c6, and that's just asking for trouble. You know, developing your two knights like this without having a foothold in the center, without having a pawn in the middle to act as a wall, keeping back the enemy pawns. You just watch these pawns just charging forward. The knight went to e5, then f4 got played, and then the knight went to g4, and then this got played. And this is sort of the dream scenario as white. This is what you want. Big wall of pawns going forward, and it's exactly why black needs to make sure that they have a pawn in the center somewhere. Personally, I think black should dump this whole idea of playing knight f6 on move 2 and switch to e6, defending it with a pawn. I think knight f6, even though it's playable as we saw in this situation, going e5 is playable. I really think just dumping the line altogether, because it's just very hard to play. Okay, so knight h5. Oh, knight h5. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. Now this is very uncomfortable. Like this knight is pinned to this knight, so a move like h3 unfortunately doesn't work because it allows knight g3. But what if the bishop just goes to e2? And that's actually what was played. It attacks this knight and pins this knight, and how on earth do you save both knights? There's only one move here, and that's f5, and that's what black found. And then, yeah, I mean, just looking at this situation, it's pretty hard to see. It's a h3 still not possible because of knight there. But what was actually played here was pretty cool. e6. That's not bad, because that just threatens things like bishop b5 check and queen a4 check. I actually like that move. But according to the engine can't make up its mind. It doesn't understand what's happening. It wants to play h3. It wants to play queen a4 check. It wants to play knight f3. It wants to play knight h3. It also wants to play bishop b5 check. It's just weird. Oh yeah, let's actually see what happens. I could probably spend half an hour trying to puzzle out which of the moves is actually best. So g6 was played. Now that just looks like it doesn't answer the problem of bishop b5 check and queen a5 check. They're the two major problems here. The king has no escape square. A move like c6, I think, has to be played. I think that's forced. Let's check the engine. Yeah, the engine wants to sack or play c6. So c6 in this position is forced. And even then, yeah, you could probably just attack it again with queen a4. And how does, maybe queen c7 keeps it safe? Maybe black can hang in there with c6. But instead of queen a4, what if we now chuck this in instead? Knight g3 is the problem, isn't it? Because if we take this and lose this, I don't think we can trap this knight in the corner. Although, according to the engine, this is really, really good for white. Just that big mass of pawns in the center is very strong. So the knight actually gets out, and then the queen attacks the knight and defends the pawn at the same time. And traps the knight. I thought the knight could escape to here, but it can't. The bishop's stopping it. Yeah, the knight actually gets trapped. So h3 takes this and then traps that one is the way to play this. That's really hard to find. I kind of feel that white has a simpler, more direct way of just winning. But after queen a7, queen a4, queen c7, it's hard to see what should happen here. So after takes, for instance, you can't take with a queen, obviously, because bishop b5 pins the queen of the king. So he has to take back with a pawn. And now what? Bishop f3, putting double pressure on this pawn. That sort of forces bishop b7. And how about now we play this? The bishop's no longer on e2 anymore, so knight g3 isn't as deadly as it used to be. Can we... Oh, we still can't. Yeah. We still lose this, don't we? According to the engine, this is like 4 points advantage to white. So obviously this knight can't get out. Maybe knight e2 just traps the knight. But then actually getting in there and winning it is a bit tricky. And also, like, what if he just takes here? Removes a lot of the pressure. Oh, knight d5 is being suggested. What is happening in this position? Ah, this is just a mess. Crazy. I mean, these moves are much easier to find for white than they are for black. Actually trying to defend and find ways without losing a piece is very, very difficult. Yeah, c6. Yeah. Working this out is hard. Bishop here, bishop there. h3 is good, but if we don't want to play h3, we want to play knight here first, so we can threaten h3. That looks pretty good. But apparently, queen b6 is a move. Why wasn't queen b6 played earlier? Ah. So after this, what about queen b6 straight away? What's wrong with that? Takes, takes, knight d5. But then queen f2 check. This is nuts. Okay, this king's going to get mated. Surely. King d1. So if this queen decides to, steal this pawn or something, this is a forced mate. So queen c7, king here, and then the bishop check leads to mate. We can take with the queen or the bishop with mate. Yeah, so the queen can't go off on any venture like that. Yeah, okay, so that's, and then the knight threat in here is possible. What about bishop b7 though? Because like after knight here, king moves, and we grab the rook. Don't we lose this? Or is this queen check here too deadly? Yeah, this is setting up a discovered check, and then we just have to find the right square for the knight to go to. What is the right square for the knight? According to this, bishop d2 is the best move. Or knight back to a8 again? What? Okay, so maybe the knight check was wrong. Queen takes a7 apparently. Yeah, this king is getting mated. Black can steal as many rooks as he wants, but it's not going to stop the fact that that black just got mated. She wants, I mean, not he wants. Okay, I'm getting out of this. This is just too messy, too crazy. Let's actually see what happened in the game. But hopefully just by exploring some of those variations, people can get a better idea of the possibilities that are in the position. So in this position here, black played g6, and that did not answer the threat of queen a4, and now black's just lost a piece. Obviously c6 doesn't do anything. You just take it with the threat of discovered check, winning the queen. And so if the pawn takes, the queen ends up taking check, and you end up losing the bishop anyway. And yeah, you end up losing a rook as well. So everything goes bye-bye. The whole lot just disappear. So black decided not to lose a rook and decided to just throw away the bishop, which makes perfect sense. So e takes, queen takes. Oh, but it doesn't end there because bishop b5 is devastating, forcing c6. And after this here, yeah, the threat of just taking here, then grabbing the rook with check is deadly. And the queen is on pre and needs to move, so the queen goes to e6 check. That's fair enough. Knight g2 was played. And now this rook has nowhere to go. If it stays where it is, check, and then the pawn takes the rook. If it goes to c8, check, and then pawn takes the rook. If it goes to d8 or b8, then we just play c7 check, and then we take the rook. Does it have to go to d8? No, that doesn't help either, because the king gets kicked out to c7, you end up getting an extra queen. Oh gosh, so in the end, maybe best is just to take the pawn and just accept the fact that you've thrown away a rook. Oh no, you've thrown away more than the rook, you've thrown away the queen as well. Everything's terrible. So you can't even, so black tried to throw away the bishop to save, preserve as much of her material as she could. So, that was the best attempt at trying to save the game. but even that doesn't work. Everything loses. So yeah, after g6, the game is over. So let's actually just quickly go through and see what happened. Bishop, yeah, really good. Queen check, and then the rook went to c8. And then c took b7, then the king went to f7. And according to this, I mean, white just took the rook and got a queen, but bishop there is even stronger because you're interfering with the queen's defense of the rook. And after the queen moves, you grab the rook for free. You don't give up the pawn for the rook. You grab it for free and get a queen. So bishop g7 would have been a much better way for white to play this. That's just really strong. That's pretty awesome. That just wins the queen. Missed that and just took it. Got excited by the fact that he was winning a whole rook. And black has got such a horrible position, unfortunately. These knights are terrible, and this is all trapped in the corner, and this king is so exposed. I cannot see a way to actually save this. Queen c4, just swap the queens off. Yeah, knight d4 check, eh? Yeah, that's good. King d6. Okay, the king's trying to run in the middle here and harass these pieces. Castles, bishop g7, rook d1. King c5, getting out of the discovered check. Be careful, you might get mated here. b4 check was played, but they're so close to mate here. I'm looking at the engine. Apparently knight e6, and that should be just obvious actually. Knight e6 check wins it, doesn't win the bishop. Knight e6 check opens up the line, so that the king can't run back this way. And where does the king run to? It has to go to b6, I think. Yeah, maybe. What about knight a4? Taking away the b6 square. If the king hops into b4, bishop there's mate. So the king will have to jump back into here, and that gives a discovered check, or in this case, a double check, winning this pawn. So what actually happened in the game was b4 check. The king didn't take. Why can't the king take? Because knight here check. There's actually quite a few different mates. There's 3 different ways to mate. 3 different ways to mate in 4 here. I think this is the most spectacular. Sack a bishop. The king takes the bishop, and then you go knight c2 check. The king has to go to b2. This is such a pretty line. Knight a4 check. The king has to take the knight, and then that's mate. That's an awesome mate there. b4 is actually brilliant because the king can't take on b4. Yeah, it's much better than I thought it was. It was only when I actually threw it into the engine and saw what it came up with that I realized that the king can't take. And there's other mates here, like knight d5 mate. Knight d5 leads to mate as well. If king here, then bishop d2 is mate. The king will have to go to c5. Then you got bishop a3 check. The king takes the knight. Bishop c6 check. These are all very pretty lines. King has to go there and then checkmate. That's really awesome because it uses every single piece to mate the king. Okay, let's not dwell too much. Just know that b4 actually does lead to mate. Black did not take it though, which is probably the sensible thing to do. Going back to either b6 or d6. I think b6 is probably best. But went back to d6. Probably was afraid that if she went back to b6, she was going to get knight forked and end up losing this pawn here. Although there are tactics going on. No, there isn't. What I just saw was the idea of the bishop taking this knight and then the king taking this bishop. But that doesn't work either because after knight d5, the king gets kicked away from attacking the bishop. Okay, so king d6, knight f5, there's the double check. King went to e6, and then bishop d7. Getting a bit carried away, maybe. I think just take the bishop. That way you get rid of this annoying pin on the rook. Just get rid of that bishop, and it's just an easy win for white. Bishop d7, check. King goes back to f7. Okay, yeah, took it now. That's good. Knight took. Knight e4. Yeah, okay. knight f6, knight g5, king f8, and yeah, maybe just bishop b2, just so the other, I was looking at bishop e2, rook across, rook up, and the bishop on that long diagonal is devastating. White's going for the really quick win, bishop e6 to release the rook up here. Decided not to use these two pieces. Knight f e8. Then the rook pinned the knight to the king. And then h6 was played, attacking the knight. And then bishop b2. Very good, very strong move. That is really, really nice. Sacrificing the knight, but it's not a problem because black is almost out of moves. Yeah, like the bishop's pinning the knight to the rook, so the knight can't move. This is pinned to the king, it can't move. This pawn is blockaded, can't move. The king can't move. The only thing black can do is run this rook up and down this line, basically. So something like, rook h5 is the sort of thing I'm thinking of. But yeah, then there's just this simple rook check. And yeah, knight f5, and then you just take it and rip it off. So yeah, there's nothing black can do. That bishop b2 sacking this knight and then taking back with the pawn is great, because you take back with the pawn, opening the f file, the king is toast. What actually happened was knight f5, offering a free rook. Just bishop takes rook here is just very strong, but white didn't take it. White decided to play rook f1 and just pin the knight to the king. Was intent on getting this mate going with the bishop and the rook and everything. Black played rook h5, white took back, took here, king g8. Yeah, not much more to this. Rook takes e7, great stuff. King g7. White's just following the engine perfectly, which is what I love to see. And then g4, awesome. Protects the rook, attacks this rook. The rook went to h4, and then yeah, rook g7 mate. Brilliant stuff by Jamie, by White there. Great little piece play at the end there, and finding all those great moves to trap the king. Finding b4 in particular is awesome, and there was nothing black can do, particularly if you're down a lot of material and your opponent is just finding the stockfish move every single move. You can be forgiven for not finding some way back into the game. Your opponent just didn't give you a chance. The key error was all the way back here, where White played this very clever e6 move, introducing checks on this line, and unfortunately Black didn't see it. And after that, Black didn't have a choice. It was game over. Black needed to play c6 here to put a stop to that. But of course, getting into this position where this was even possible should never have happened in the first place because of the choice of opening by Black. And I really think get rid of this knight f6 idea and start playing e6 against the Queen's Gambit. Okay, I hope you all learned something from that game. Thanks for listening. See you later.